Hello everyone and thank you for joining me. This is my second cross fountain pen and probably the last one for a while. This is also one of the very few fountain pens that I have no clue on how to pronounce it, so I hope I'm saying it right. The Calais. I'll put a French spin to it, that should make it sound better, right? Like the fountain pen from last week, this is another fountain pen that has been sitting in its box waiting for me to pick it up. I have a few of them sitting like that, so I decided to slowly work my way through them only so I can get rid of the boxes. I really dislike fountain pen boxes, to be honest. Can you imagine if I would keep all of the boxes? The boxes by themselves will take way more space than the actual fountain pen, and I will probably need a room only for them. Anyway, the Calais, a fairly simple fountain pen from Cross. It comes with a metal cap and barrel and a plastic section that has attached at the end of it the same nib as the Bailey version that I had a look at back in February. The nib design seems to work okay. I would have liked to see maybe a larger nib on it, but honestly, as long as it will work properly, I don't think I am going to care that much. The barrel on the fountain pen is actually a little bit heavy, and because of the plastic section, the fountain pen, even unposted, is still pretty back heavy. Once you post the cap, which posts pretty well and secure by the way, the whole setup becomes even more top heavy. Two negatives from the get-go in my opinion: the clip is extremely stiff and barely usable, and there was no converter included. However, it did came with two black ink cartridges. Otherwise, I think it is priced pretty good based on what you get. It seems to be a pretty decent fountain pen. But let's find out for sure. So let's ink it up and then let's dive into a Scribble and see what it can do. For today's ink, I will be using something that I have not used for a while and kind of missed it. The Fuyu-Syogun from Iroshizuku. During the fill-up, there were no issues with the fountain pen or any mishaps. The only thing that I noticed was that the ink seems to have a lot of air bubbles inside of it. I don't know if this is because of the converter that is not a Cross original, as far as I know, or because of the fountain pen. I was careful to make sure the nib was properly submerged in the ink bottle. However, this had no effect on how the fountain pen functioned, which was actually pretty good as far as I can tell. The real oh shoot moment, though, was when this advertised fine nib touched the paper. Oh man, that was a little bit of a shocker for me. This nib turned out to be a broad nib, easily in my books. I really was not impressed by that discovery because this means I've just been set up for another challenge this week and I was not really planning for it. The nib worked fine, no problem there. Maybe a little bit scratchy on reverse, which is a bummer because I won't be able to use it, but the ink flow was beautiful without any kind of issues. I made the effort to write at my normal size to demonstrate why a broad nib for me, it's really not a good idea. Hard to read anything in there. Can't wait for next week when I can finally control what I am using, since I'm going to focus more on the drawing part. Anyway, in the end the fountain pen seems to be writing without any issues. So let's up the ante and give it a good workout with a Scribble. Alright, well, here we are, Scribble time. I did had a plan for today. Unfortunately, my plan was foiled by the fountain pen, which decided to surprise me in a not very pleasant way, let's put it that way. Did not expect it to use a broad nib for today. So the beginning was a little bit difficult for me today. It took me a while to figure out what to do and which way to go with whatever I didn't have in mind now anymore. And eventually I started to put some lines on the page and kind of jumped around a little bit with the lines and kind of, went around in a circle, looking for something, looking for a shape. And I got to have a couple of lines in there that were looking like a complete mess and that I wasn't sure where to go with it. And then I just, kind of decided to, again, force myself to let loose and started to just fill in spaces. Fortunately, one thing that did work for me today was my trace of ink. This ink layers pretty nicely and I can build quite a lot of depth with it. So I kind of use that to my full advantage. So like last week I started to use it more like a brush than anything else. And because it was broader, actually it was putting even more ink on the page. And this specific Iroshizuku ink seems to be quite flowy. Again, I think it's the ink from what I remember when I used it in the other fountain pens, and not just the fountain pen, right? And I dived into it and I started to fill in the shapes that I've seen on the page after I put those lines. I had some regrets. I almost give up on it already. I was actually even thinking to go and rip the nib out of the other cross that I have. Well, not rip, but more like, move it and replace it. But then I realized that would be like cheating because, well, I got this fountain pen as is. I should test it as is, not, cheat and use a different nib for it. And I fought against those impulses and I pulled with it and I pulled through the design. And I kind of end up with a very odd shape. I guess could be some sort of a monster. I don't know. It definitely has a shape to it, let's put it that way. One thing that I do like about it though is how flowy the shape is. And I kind of work on that. I wanted to make it as flowy as possible. So I worked in making a lot of swirls and turns and, like this monster or whatever it is has a lot of crevices and a lot of things into it, like almost is sculpted. And I kind of like the end result. I'm not 100% sure if I really pulled it off, but I do like it. And it's kind of close to something that I've been trying to do recently, kind of a drawing style, not necessarily style, more like technique, I guess, that I've been experimenting with in one of my sketchbooks that I really like. And that's the thing that I wanted to experiment with more today. But that kind of calls for, at least for me, for a more thin nib, more like an extra fine, Japanese extra fine. So I'll keep that idea for next time. Well, better said maybe for next week, since next week I will actually do, or better said, for the next 2 weeks, I'll be focusing more on the scribble part. So I will try and use other mediums other than fountain pen. Well, most probably still gonna be ink based, just not fountain pen as a tool. What exactly? I don't know, we'll see. So the video probably will be a little bit longer because I'm only gonna focus on the drawing part, and I'm gonna have like a real-time drawing session here and there. I might speed it up here and there, but mostly will be just the drawing. Just as a heads up for what to expect next week, in case you're not interested in seeing that and you want to skip it, which it's absolutely fine, I understand that. Anyway, going back to the drawing, like I said, I think I really like how it turned out. The challenge and the surprise pushed me into, well, out of my comfort zone, and I appreciate that in a way because it made me, well, come up with whatever I got out of it today. And the funny part is I put so much ink into this drawing, I don't even remember how many times I refilled the fountain pen. Try and count it. Let me know how many times you see it. I honestly forgot. It must have been at least 5 times easily, because this nib dumps a lot of ink. I got to a point where I actually liked that wetness, that I wanted it to have it constantly. And what you'll see me from time to time doing, I actually remove the barrel and push ink into the feed to oversaturate the feed and give me even more ink so I can fill in even better. So I totally embraced the challenge and I actually end up really enjoying it. I liked it. And as for the fountain pen, well, it worked out pretty good. The only problem that I had was I think it was the converter, not the actual fountain pen. At one point, for whatever reason, ink wasn't coming out. So that was the first time when I actually removed the barrel and pushed ink into the feed. And after that, I didn't have an issue. But again, I don't think it's the fountain pen's fault. I think there's some issue with the converter, because every time I was trying to fill it up, there was a lot of air bubbles in it. I got to a point where I actually decided to stop filling it the normal way, and I just used a syringe to put ink directly into the converter. And that worked out way much better. And I did that until the end. I actually stopped drawing when I ran out of ink again in the fountain pen. After, again, I don't know how many fill-ups. And I think I would have worked on the drawing even more if I would have not the warning that I have 2 minutes left into my memory card, which is actually a pretty big memory card. And yeah, it filled it up. I think I've been drawing at it, or I've been at it for at least 3 hours or something like that. And when that warning came up, that was my clue that I need to stop because it's getting late. I drew on it since 11:30 all the way up to 2:30 in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, all that just for this silly drawing just took time. But it was relaxing. I really enjoyed it. One thing that made me work slowly on it was the fact that, well, like I said, he was putting a lot of ink on the page, but it was taking a little bit for the ink to dry. And I had to wait for it to dry, because if I was trying to come on top again with a new layer, the ink was just spreading into the wet ink that was already in the page and was giving weird shapes, and I couldn't really layer it properly. So I kind of had to jump from one part of the drawing to a different part of the drawing while waiting for the other part to, well, dry out. It was fun, challenging, fun, and an interesting drawing for today. I kind of like it. I like all the crevices and the very organic lines that I got out of it. It was a fun challenge. I don't know if I want to do it again, especially when it's unplanned for. Anyway, I think it's getting pretty late right now, and I'm sure you are tired of hearing my voice. Conclusion, fun fountain pen. I really enjoyed it. It seems to work pretty okay. The only disappointment was, well, no converter included and no... and the clip was really stiff and top heavy when posted and unposted. And other than that, I think it was pretty good. I have no complaints, no real complaints about it. I won't blame the fountain pen for the issues that I had with the converter. No issues recommending it based on the price that I paid and the unit that I have. With that said, thank you for joining me, and I'll hopefully see you next week. Wish you all the best and a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.